What is going on, guys, and welcome back to this discussion. For today's video, we're going to be going through everything that we can expect heading into the beginning of 2026. Starting off firstly with Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class G1 Sure Shot. Now, I'm quite surprised to see this guy actually see a release. He was originally supposed to be a part of the final wave of Legacy United, alongside Core Class Dinobot, although unfortunately was completely cancelled. He does appear to be a brand new mold. To be honest, I was expecting them to maybe retool the Legacy Point Blank. He will include a Target Master, although unfortunately this is quite simplified in comparison to what we did see from Transformers Siege, but overall he looks really good. But I do imagine that stacked up against the Legacy Point Blank, we are definitely going to need an updated version of Crosshairs, as that War for Cybertron version does honestly kind of look slightly outdated. There will also be G1 Blastoff, the second Combaticon to form Bruticus. Now, to be completely honest, I was thoroughly impressed with Vortex. He set the standard pretty high, especially in comparison to some of the Aerial Bot Deluxes, and Blastoff really does appear to continue with that trend. He is a marked improvement in comparison to Combiner Wars. They went incredibly cartoon accurate with the design, even down to having the animation error of the visor being painted instead of the actual eyes. The only part of the design that I visually don't think looks the best would be, again, the hollow inside of the legs. They really need to pull away from that because it really does just cheapen the overall look. His shuttle mode though looks fantastic and does confirm that, much like Superion, the arms at least will be very similar in design, meaning that they will just attach onto a skeleton. Now we turn to what may just be one of the most underwhelming figures to so far be released for Age of the Primes, Deluxe Class Junkion Jalopy. Honestly, we're not going to spend too much time discussing this one because I think that it's an absolute waste of a slot. To be honest, I had expected this to be a repaint of the Studio Series 86 Jazz, but instead they went in a completely different direction. It's a repainted version of Axle Grease, inspired by the look of the Junkions from the 1986 animated movie. I just find it wild that repaints like this get the go-ahead in the main line, yet we are still waiting for Scavenger to be repainted into Demolisher. Definitely an easy pass for myself, which cannot be said for Beast Wars Quick Strike, which is set to release to coincide with the 30th anniversary of the TV show. Now, this will be a complete unique mold. Again, I was kind of expecting this to maybe be a retool of the Kingdom Scorponok, but they went completely original with the design, and I think he looks all the better for it. To be fair, there's not really much else to say about this guy other than he looks great, and to be honest, I couldn't have asked for anything better. And to continue on with that trend, the final deluxe class for Wave 1 would be Quintus Prime, the first Prime to kick off the second year of Age of the Primes. Now, this is a design that when it was rumoured to be a part of the lineup, I just kind of sat there and thought, how on earth are they going to pull this off, especially at the deluxe class price point? And I've got to say that following in the footsteps of the previous Primes, they absolutely nailed it. Quintus, as the name would suggest, is basically a Quintesson, and with Transformers 1 only having recently given us a pretty rough deluxe Quintesson, I was expecting this to look terrible. It surprisingly even looks to have proper legs underneath all those tentacles, so should hopefully also be fairly articulated. As far as the alt mode goes, they've decided to transform him into a mechanical squid, which personally I think suits this character down to a T. Now we jump up a size class into Voyager. So first up is G1 Brawl, the third Combaticon to form Bruticus, and arguably the most interesting, especially in terms of how he will integrate into the actual combined mode. Honestly, one of the highlights for myself to be released. This guy looks solid, easily the best mainline Brawl potentially ever made. They've stuck incredibly faithful to the animation model. The only thing which is slightly throwing me at the moment is that I do wish that more of the treads could have made up the actual shoulders. Now, this guy, despite his price point, will only be roughly deluxe in terms of size, so very similar to what we only recently saw from the 86 movie Scrapper and Mixmaster, so I'm hoping that means that he'll be pretty filled out. As for the tank mode, this looks superb, fully decked out with all of the weapons that he had in the cartoon, but what I find to be most interesting is how this will connect into Bruticus. Right in the middle of the torso, there appears to be a slightly off-center screw, potentially hinting that this will contain maybe the ratchet joint for the ankle of the combined mode. So I guess this does somewhat confirm that Bruticus will be a hybrid in the way he combines, with the arms matching with Superion, whilst the legs being slightly more inspired by the design of Devastator. And when you begin to look at the animation model of Bruticus, to be honest, it just makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, we go from yet another high to an absolute low, as the next figure to accompany Brawl will be an animated universe Wreck-Gar. Honestly, like Jalopy, at this point I have minimal interests in the Junkions. I just feel like this guy maybe should have come out during Legacy Evolution. He will be a slight retail of Trashmaster, which to be honest I did like quite a lot, but not really enough to get excited about this guy, I'm afraid. But then we shoot to yet another absolute high, with the third and final Voyager releasing for Wave 1, that being Alchemist Prime. Now this was another member of the 13 that I was really left scratching my head as to how on earth they were ever going to pull this off. His design honestly looks like a Bayformer, just basically a cluster of mechanical parts with a very vague outline of a robot, and again they absolutely nailed it. I keep saying in almost any review that I do for the 13 that they just keep getting more and more ambitious, and I really do think this guy's yet again another prime example. He will include the T-Cog as his ancient artifact, which can then actually plug into the eye socket to create for a very Shockwave inspired look. It's also been said by the designer that he will basically have an endless amount of alt modes, because the limbs are actually detachable much like a weaponizer. Jumping into yet another size class, we have Leader Beast Wars Razorclaw. Now this guy is the inevitable repaint of Tigerhawk, and I've got to say that it's definitely looking to be the better between the two. Despite that though, I very much doubt that I'll be picking this guy up, because instead I will be gunning for his wave mate, that being Beast Wars Neo Big Convoy. Now I think for many this was the highlight of the reveals. This guy has been a long time coming, especially after the release of the Commander class Magmatron. As you would expect, they absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one. He will include a whole host of accessories to really justify that leader class price point, although not articulated hands, which I do think is a slight missed opportunity. You will also be able to remove a pretty decent chunk of the back to form a massive blaster which looks sick. The Woolly Mammoth mode also is an absolute sight to behold. Even the head of the beast mode can be popped open to reveal additional weaponry. This guy is just honestly a walking tank and is a great update in comparison to the previous version. Then to round off the reveals for Age of the Primes, we have to discuss the very slight tease that we got for the upcoming Commander class, that being G1 Onslaught. Now unfortunately this wasn't the full reveal, instead it just appears to be an image of the uncoloured packaging art, but it still gives us a pretty decent look of the robot mode. Honestly, as of right now, I think he looks fantastic, a huge improvement as you would expect over the Combiner Wars version, and much like the previously revealed Combaticons, arguably the best looking Onslaught that Hasbro has ever made. Now I would imagine to truly justify that Commander class price point, this guy's trailer is going to form the main bulk of Bruticus, and personally I think it makes much more sense for him to do so, especially in comparison to what we did see from Silverbolt. That random chunk they included with him I just felt was slightly out of place, and I think would have worked much better had they instead tried to make it transform into the runway as seen from the original G1 toy. Now it's time to change gears and head into the reveals for Transformers Studio Series, starting off with the Lux Class Transformers 1 Arachnid. Now this figure was originally shown off as a grey prototype, I believe back in June, and I've got to say that even like that I was super impressed with how it turned out. Now seeing it near enough complete, she looks amazing for the price point. In the movie she had arguably one of the more interesting designs, and it's one that honestly I would have thought would have only worked as a Voyager. Now looking at this, whilst visually she does look great, I am hoping that in hand she's not going to be an absolute pain to mess with. There appears to be multiple joints, and by design she also appears to be missing a lot of points of articulation. So in hindsight it maybe would have been a better idea to bump her up to Voyager, and then maybe they could have also included Sentinel Prime's blade. But she will be able to transform into an incredibly distinctive Cybertronian drone, which despite breaking apart into limbs, will actually have a spinning rotor blade, which is pretty neat from a design standpoint. Releasing alongside her will also be a Transformers The Last Night Barricade. Now as someone who grew up with the Michael Bay movies, I'm always incredibly excited to see characters from those films updated into Studio Series, and Barricade was a long time coming. The previous Transformers 5 Deluxe really wasn't the best, especially in comparison to the CG design. This figure, however, is a marked improvement. He looks fantastic. The level of detail that they were able to cram into some of these live action movie figures will never cease to amaze me. The only part of the design that I'm not overly thrilled with at the moment would have to be the feet. They do honestly look kind of strange, but his vehicle mode is just awesome. I do believe that unlike the previous version, this is officially licensed, and you can tell as in comparison to the vehicle used on screen, it's almost perfect. Then to round off the first wave of deluxes, we have 86 movie Windcharger. Now this is a character which I'm honestly quite surprised even made it into Studio Series, at least in this form, as I'm pretty sure that he only shows up in the movie for a few seconds as a corpse. With that being said, the figure is mostly really well done for a mini-bot. I have got to say that I do think the legs could have maybe done with some slight redesigning just to really hide some of the hollowness, but for the most part, yet again, another pretty solid update. He will also include a blast effect to simulate his ability of magnetism, which is pretty neat, and he will also feature an articulated faceplate, which should hopefully allow for a slightly more dynamic range. Then we bump things up to Voyager, starting off with Transformers 1 Alpha Trion. Now alongside Arachnid, this guy was previously shown off as a grey prototype, which to begin with I thought looked mostly solid. Having said that, I don't think these images do the best job in making him look quite as good. Firstly, he's missing his cape, and I think that's something that they could have easily included. They maybe could have packaged it similar to what we did see from the Dark of the Moon Leader class Megatron and had it been a fabric material. That way it wouldn't hinder the transformation at all. Instead, without it, the design just looks incomplete, not to mention that at least from these images, he doesn't appear to have any ankle tilt, which for a Voyager simply sucks. I will say though that surprisingly his beast mode looks exactly like the film, with some pretty sick detailing along with even the missing chunks of armor to simulate his battle damage. Overall though, in comparison to the mainline deluxe, right now this really isn't looking to be that much of an improvement, and honestly I would recommend the Age of the Primes version over this. Although yet again Hasbro taking us from a major low to a massive high, as the next reveal is the 86 movie Thundercracker. Now this reveal completely stole the show for me. With them having released the Earthrise Starscream as a Studio Series figure only a few years back, I honestly expected them to do exactly the same with Thundercracker. Instead, he's a complete brand new mold, and honestly looks to be a mainline masterpiece. The Earthrise version I personally was never a huge fan of. It was based off the classic Starscream, so to begin with I always thought was kind of outdated. This version however looks near identical to the animation model. He appears to have all of the modern points of articulation, including a waist swivel, which is fantastic. The back of this version also looks to be incredibly clean, with them also having found a way to completely get rid of the nose cone. The only part of the design that I'm not overly thrilled with at the moment is that the side fins also appear to parts form. If you want the legs completely clean, then you have to pop these off and store them onto the back. It's not a major deal breaker, but it is something that I do wish was a part of the actual transformation. Then, rounding things off for Studio Series Wave 1, let's now discuss the Leader class figures, starting off with the Transformers 5 and Nemesis Prime, which we all knew was coming, especially when they made specific note of the Age of Extinction version having the regular forearms. I have got to say though that between the two, this is definitely looking to be the superior version. The colour of plastic used is leagues above in comparison. He will include the unmasked head, new forearms, a shotgun, the dagger that he did use to fight off against Bumblebee, and the same sword and shield that we did see from the first version. Honestly, if you missed out on the Age of Extinction release, then I would definitely say that this Nemesis Prime is probably the better deal between the two. Not only do you get more accessories, but also arguably a better looking figure. And talking of updates, the next release will be an 86 movie Soundwave. We are heading into the 40th anniversary of the legendary 1986 animated movie, and Soundwave was a big character to tick off the list. Honestly, I just feel kinda sorry for those who only recently picked up the Legacy United version. I did try to advise against picking up that release, as I knew sooner or later Hasbro was going to bring out a vastly superior update. Now we'll start off firstly with Soundwave himself. He will be a complete brand new mold. The designers have been hinting at giving him the 86 treatment really ever since the release of the Kingdom Blaster. I for the most part really like the way this guy looks. In comparison to the Earthrise version, undoubtedly this is a massive improvement. What I do think looks kind of strange though would be how simple the shoulders and forearms in particular look. We are used to these 86 movie characters having a certain amount of greeballs sculpted into the design, and honestly with that lacking, it almost reminds me of the red Soundwave. Now I'm sure that in hand this will be something that you barely notice, but as of right now, it's really not doing this guy any favours in my opinion. I was also hoping that they would have been able to find a way to finally get rid of the extra cassette buttons on the back. To me, it would have made perfect sense for this panel to have completely flipped over. The cassette player mode though looks awesome, completely solid, and will undoubtedly share some engineering with the Masterpiece version. Now in terms of accessories, these honestly surprised me. He will include Laserbeak, Ravage and Buzzsaw, which are all completely brand new. Ravage is a massive upgrade in beast mode compared to the Transformers Siege version and looks awesome. The same can also be said for Laserbeak. I am a little confused though as to why Buzzsaw's been included. To be honest, I think this just kind of adds salt to the wound for those who did pick up the Legacy version solely for that cassette, and personally I would have much rather had seen him scrapped in favour of giving Soundwave more engineering. Then, as for a figure which at the moment isn't planned to release until summer of 2026, we have to discuss Titan Class. There will be an Age of Extinction Grimlock. Now I think out of all of the reveals, this one took me by surprise the most. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this at all. Now to kind of go back to my previous point, I am a massive fan of the Michael Bay movies, although I did feel slightly underwhelmed with this being the choice of character for multiple reasons. Firstly, this will release during the 40th anniversary of the 86 movie. Surely, the first Titan of Studio Series should have been Unicron. Now don't get me wrong, the figure does look amazing, but so did the original Leader Class version. With the exception of it being slightly smaller in comparison to the film, I really don't think that was a big enough excuse to have him over the likes of Unicron. I also think that it's kinda too late. Since 2018, we've seen countless third-party, upscales, and even the amazing G Creations Grimlock, which will all be likely cheaper in comparison to this Titan. Not to mention that despite visually looking impressive, the Dino mode doesn't really appear to be all that articulated. The head is locked into place and the jaw can't even close all of the way, which I do think for the price is honestly gonna suck. What I will say though is that it is pretty exciting how they have now confirmed that by 2029 we should have completed the Age of Extinction Dinobots, with them having released one annually starting in 2026. Then, to round this video off, we are going to be turning to a slightly controversial topic, that being the price points heading into 2026. It's now been more or less confirmed that Deluxes will be increasing from $24.99 to $27.99, Voyagers from $34.99 to a whopping $42.99, and then Leaders from $54.99 to $59.99. Honestly, this sucks so bad. Now, I do imagine that current world events do more than likely play a part in this increase, but there is definitely an element of corporate greed from Hasbro. Over the past few months, we've seen countless statements from their CEO regarding this inevitable price increase, and I've got to say that this is going to isolate a lot of collectors from the hobby. That Voyager price point in particular is just ridiculous. To think that the upcoming Transformers 1 Alpha Trion will retail for almost $45 is just batshit crazy, and will no doubt in today's climate turn so many people off collecting. If you're also someone younger who perhaps is just getting into Transformers, then your minimum entry fee in getting a decent figure would have to be nearly $30, which in this day and age I think is just too expensive. But I would love to get your thoughts. Be sure to sound off below and let me know. As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Transform and roll out!